Welcome back, everyone. It's time for our next session. It's my honor to introduce Professor Danny Huang from the Department of Foreign Languages and Literature at the College of Liberal Arts. Thank you for being here, Professor Huang. Also, we have Steve Lee here with us today, a lecturer at the Center for Bilingual Education. Welcome, Lecturer Lee. All right, so over to you, Danny.
All right, thank you, Ellie, for the introduction. So, we got clapping already. So, dear colleagues, good afternoon. How are you this afternoon? Hopefully, you're still sober. I can't really see any of you, so I assume that you're still awake with me. Okay, my name is Danny Huang, and today my co-presenter is Steve Lee, and we are both affiliated with National Taiwan University. And today is our honor to share with you an EAP speaking activity. That is the integrated speaking workshops. Okay. All right. This is the, hold on a second. Okay. Thank you for telling me that you're still awake. This is the oral training activity that we did last year when we taught this EAP course, and it has been really, really successful and well received by our students. So we're really, really thrilled and excited to share this activity with you. Next, please. So in this session, we're scheduled to go through only 2 items. The first one being English Medium Instruction Preparation Program, EMIP, at National Taiwan University, NTU. And then the beef of the session is the EAP speaking activity, integrated speaking workshops. Because this workshop or this oral training activity is situated in this course, the EMIP course, so we deem it important or necessary for us to give you some description of the course for you to have the context with which that makes sense of this activity. All right, so let's get started. And first off, the EMIP at NTU. Next slide, please. All right, so EMIP represents a one module under the existing freshman English curriculum at NTU, which is necessarily important. What do I mean by that? You know, freshman students will not take any classes unless they're required. So it's important that this module is a required one. So students will come and take the class instead of getting out of it. Right, in terms of the course objectives, EMIP aims to foster English proficiency, EMI course taking skills, English speaking and writing skills, and favorable effective responses. We're quite ambitious. All right, next slide, please. All right, so a little bit history about the development process of EMIP. Well, EMIP was developed by following this ADDIE model: analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. First of all, please click it, yes. So, and first of all, we perform needs analysis with 21 faculty members and students. And based on the results of the needs analysis, we established 4 course objectives for EMIP. Next, please. And then we recruited 6 content experts and 8 developers to come up with altogether 32 lesson plans along with their accompanying PPT files. And in the academic year of 2023 to 2024, that is last year, this EMIP course was implemented to 6 sessions with a total of 106 students. And during the duration of that academic year, we held 12 monthly meetings to go through the issues that had occurred and the response strategies. And finally, we evaluated the effectiveness of this program. Can we see the last? Yes. We evaluated the effectiveness of this program via such instruments as 2 sets of Bestep speaking tests, 3 self-report scales, 1 focus interview, 12 reflective reports, and 12 course evaluation. And here I would like to mention that the Bestep speaking test was adopted as one major evaluation instrument, mainly because it aligns really nicely with the course objectives of this EMIP program, both in terms of the construct and in terms of the test types. So what does the evaluation result look like? Right, long story short, the EMIP course significantly increased English speaking proficiency and English learning self-confidence, while at the same time decreasing English learning anxiety. So to us, this is a yay. However, the picture is not all pretty and rosy because students' English learning motivation did not experience any changes, as in they don't feel more motivated or less motivated, which might be a good thing. Okay, next slide, please. So overall, our students responded very positively to the EMIT because of the opportunity to speak up in English, develop EMI course taking skills, and preview EMI course taking demand. And also, however, students felt overwhelmed by the amount of course materials covered in class and expected instruction on field-specific terminologies. Well, as for the second result, I don't think we could do too much about field-specific terminologies because we still position EMIT as a English for general academic purposes course. As for the first result, it is really important because it lends support to the importance of developing integrated speaking skills. Why? Because integrated speaking activities offer students a lot of opportunities to speak up in English, and integrated speaking constitutes one EMI course taking skill, and it also allows students to preview the demand of EMI course taking process. So these are the program evaluation results supporting what we're talking about today. So let's move on to the B of this session, the EAP speaking activity, integrated speaking workshops. Next slide, please. So exactly what is integrated speaking or integrated L2 speaking? Well, it refers to the act of speaking in the L2 by integrating the providing input information. And the providing input information could take the form of textual, such as written passages, auditory, such as audio recordings, or visual materials, such as statistical graphs. Then, why is it important to develop such integrated speaking skills? From the needs analysis we performed with faculty members that I mentioned earlier, integrated speaking skills were repeatedly emphasized by the faculty members in the sense that they always give students a lot of materials for them to integrate into their speaking. For example, lectures or assigned readings for them to summarize and produce orally. So one important course objective based on that is the cultivation of integrated speaking skills. And as you can see on this slide, these are the 4 course objectives established for EMIP, with the number 2 objective being communicate effectively, give a well-structured presentation, and present key points about integrated information, which readily foregrounds the importance of integrated speaking skills. And as a side note, these course objectives are in great alignment with Bestep, or the other way around. I mean, the Bestep is actually designed to serve something like these objectives. That's why Bestep speaking test was used as our major evaluation instrument. However, do students care about research findings? Do they care about what other faculty members think? Probably not. So in order to get students on board about the importance of developing their integrated speaking skills, we try really hard to more explicitly come up with reasons that students can understand and would agree with. So with that in mind, we came up with 3 reasons situated in 3 contexts, hopefully persuading students in a better way. So in the context of higher education, students are frequently asked to speak based on course materials, such as discussing assigned readings.
Oops, I think we have lost Danny in Starbucks. So
Okay, I can keep on reading. So basically in higher education, students are frequently asked to speak based on the course materials, such as discussing assigned readings, statistical data, or lectures. And also workplace employees often.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry. I got you down from the meeting room. Okay. So in the context of workplace, employees often need to discuss and present reports or proposals done based on thorough research and analysis. And in the third context would be Okay, so in the context of everyday life, we usually share information we learn from somewhere with students around us, such as a graph we bumped into somewhere, a new story we chanced upon, etc. So 3 reasons in 3 contexts. And when I gave these reasons to my students here, of course, they always put on a poker face because they know they have to do something about it. At the same time, I actually see some shining eyes in them because that shows that they actually understood what I said and they agree with what I said. So if you ever need to sway your students about the importance of developing integrated speaking skills, you are welcome to use these reasons. but we'll have to charge you because these are copyrighted. Of course, I'm just joking. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the forums in the input materials, the MA focuses on tables. Can you just click yeah.
Yes.
Tables and statistical graphs such as pie charts, line graphs, bar charts, and flow charts. And we're also focused on texts, and integrating information from two sources is another focus as well. So that's basically the background. I mean, the course in which the activity is situated, and that's my part. Now I'd like to pass the baton to Steve to talk about the real beef of this session, integrated speaking workshops themselves. So Steve, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Danny. You ran a little bit over time, but okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Steve. I'm one senior manager at Center for Bilingual Education, also doubling as a adjunct instructor at General Education. So allow me to start my presentation with a joke. So I'm going to give everyone a few seconds to examine what the graph on the left, and how would you describe it? This brings us to the beef of today's presentation. So instead of going through one particular lesson plan in detail with you, we're going to offer you some suggestion on lesson planning. We'll first look at the presentation's preparation stage, where we provide the lexical knowledge student needs to describe a graph. We also provide them a structure to help them formulate their description. Once students have acquired the necessary vocabulary, then we move into the class activity stage. For the presentation today, we'll share with you the 3 paired exercises that were more well-liked by our students. Them being pair work, time description activity, and peer feedback activity. We'll go into more details later in this presentation. Then we'll explain the assessment and feedback stage, where we offer students constructive feedback. Constructive feedback is a response to someone's activity aimed at helping them become more effective. It can achieve this by highlighting strengths, weaknesses, growth opportunities, and new perspectives. More importantly, we find that criteria-driven feedback tends to be more effective to students, meaning feedback's focusing on the language used and the structure. Last but not least, the homework stage. We'll show you some of the take-home exercises we used, which were created by our TAs. So now let us examine each stage with a little bit more of details. In the language use phase, our goal is to ensure that students have enough lexicon to adequately describe a graph in front of them. These includes introduction phase, such as this graph shows, demonstrates, illustrates. It is always helpful to provide synonyms, allowing students not to repeat the same thing over and over again. Then we could provide vocabulary describing different trends, including upward trends, downward trends, and stability. Then there are phrases quantifying changes, such as a slight drop of 15%, a significant increase of 25%. Lastly, we could demonstrate how to make comparison with these examples on the slides. Once students have the lexicon to describe a graph, then we move into structure and approach. As you can see, the suggested structure here includes introduction, main trend, details, personal connections, and conclusion. In each section, some example questions are provided. By asking them these questions, students are able to formulate their answers. For example, what is the title of the graph? What do the x-axis and y-axis represent? What is the general trend of the graph? Is it going upward, downward, or steady? Or some interesting fact illustrated in the graph? Can you relate to the details shown in the graph? Are they similar or different? How so? What are the most important takeaways? Then we move into class activity stage. It is important to note that we favor class activity where students have to work in pairs because it encourages interaction. a very essential element in the integrated speaking task. The first activity is called Depict the Graph. This is normally utilized in this beginner stage. It is very simple and very easy to execute. We put students in pairs and ask one of them to describe a graph to the other without showing the graph to the other. And then have the other student try to draw what's being described. Our students, in our experience, responded quite well to this activity. The second activity is called time description. We would ask our students to take turns to describe as many details as possible in a certain amount of time. Afterwards, we would ask them to discuss which parts were easy or difficult to describe within the time limit. This is actually a suitable exercise to do in class, especially if you plan to prepare students for the Bestep, because it requires students to formulate their answers under the pressure of time. The last activity is called the peer feedback activity. We do suggest using this activity when students are more familiar with the graph description task. In this activity, we will ask students to take turns to describe a graph while the other evaluates. I should mention that we always give students clear criteria to evaluate. This helps the evaluator to stay focused and provide constructive feedback. Now, if time permits, we could always have a few volunteers to share their answers with the class. So lastly, we have the homework stage, which is to ensure that students have the time to digest what they learned in class and practice what they learned on their own. With the help of TA, we created exercises similar to the ones you find on Bestep, a combination of a graph and a passage. We'll show you some examples towards the end of this presentation. So students are asked to record their answers and upload them onto a chosen platform. Then the instructor will evaluate, provide constructive feedback on their assignment. The word constructive keeps appearing during this presentation because we find it more effective and more helpful to provide compliments and suggestions on specific details of their work rather than on the work as a whole. Now, let us demonstrate the stages with the help of a graph. This is a graph illustrating a consumption of spreads in the UK between 1981 to 2007. At this stage, it might be a fun idea to have the student describe this graph before undergoing all the above mentioned stages and see how disastrous it can be. Also ask them to compare their before and after answers to help them understand the effectiveness of this training. So in the first stage, we will provide them with general vocabulary such as line graph, spread, margin, and consumption. You'd be surprised to find out how many students don't actually understand the word spread. We'd also provide them descriptive vocabulary such as rise, ascend, drop, descend, mild, slight, drastic, significantly. Then we will offer them a recommended structure like the one you see on the slide. Generally, students are asked to explain what the graph shows and what the x-axis and y-axis represent in the first paragraph, followed by the paragraph describing an overall trend. For example, is it going upwards, downwards, or staying steady? Then they should describe one of the details in the third graph, and finally illustrate another detail while making a contrast with the first detail. It is also recommended to ask students to practice ending their description with a personal interpretation. This is a good practice for the Bestep because we notice quite a large number of students are able to adequately describe a graph after training, but they have a hard time making personal connection to it. Once they have the recommended structure, then we will provide them some sample questions to help them formulate their answers. Questions like, what is the overall trend? What are the highest and lowest points? Are there any similarity, reverse trends? What are other trends, relevant data? Do they correspond to the trend you've discovered? Then we could utilize the peer feedback activity with this graph, allowing students 2.5 minutes to examine the graph on their own, then describe it while the other student evaluates. Please remember that it is helpful to give students clear criteria to comment on. If the time permits, we can always have some volunteers to share their answers with the class. An instructor will offer constructive feedback based on their answers. And lastly, for homework, we'll ask students to record their answers and upload them onto a specific platform. Depending on the class size, we could really consider asking a TA to help with the evaluations. Let us revisit what we have gone through in this presentation today. So first, we look at the preparation stage, where we provide lexical knowledge to the students, and then we provide structure and approach to help them better formulate their answers. Then we look at class activity, the pair of work activity, the time description activity, and also peer feedback activity. Then in the assessment and feedback stage, we recommend to have constructive feedback and also criteria-driven feedback that focuses on language use and structure. And finally, we should always give student homework to allow them the opportunity to digest what they learn in class and try to use them on their own. Now, we would like to use this opportunity to offer you some tips. It is highly recommended to help students correlate their lives with the task at hand. This will allow the student to be more focused and less likely to fall asleep. We also want to mention that students might seem clueless at first, but they advance quite quickly after a few training sessions, at least with our students. We also encourage the idea of enlisting help from the TA, not only to create additional exercises, but also to interact with students during class activity. On lesson planning, we could provide handouts with lexicons, structures, sentences, sentence patterns, and sample descriptions. We recommend using pair activities to create more opportunities for students to interact with each other. Also, we would recommend allowing enough time for each activity, especially in the beginning of the training. And finally, for the execution, you can prevent students from sounding like a robot by practicing using different sentence structure or descriptive vocabulary. And for the peer feedback activity, it will be more effective to ask students to comment on specific criteria, such as language use and structure. So as promised, here are some examples of take-home assignments created by our TAs. The one you see on the screen right now talks about the correlation between coffee consumption and heart disease. The second one you see on the screen talks about life expectancy of smokers. And the last one talks about the study of music and cognitive abilities. Okay. Now, before I let you go, or before we go into question and answer, question period, I do have some additional resources for you guys. The first one is the IELTS oral exam preparation. There are a lot of resources online you can find. The second one is the Bestep official website. Under the oral test preparation, you can also find a lot of different resources there. Also, lastly, this book, which is not we're not taking any money from LTTC. Are we? All right. No, but just very quickly, it is for sale now, or it is pre-sale now. It is a book that talks very detailed about how to prepare, or there's guidelines how to prepare your lessons and how to effectively teach students to describe graphs. Yeah, so that's my part of the presentation. Thank you.